The kitchen light casts a small island of warmth over a stack of unopened envelopes. Alex sits there, shoulders rounded, a pen idly tapping the rim of a coffee mug gone cold. A faded family photo leans against a pepper shaker, a younger face smiling at a moment when money felt like a horizon, not a wall. I shouldn't have waited this long. Alex whispers, half confession, half fear. The numbers in the spreadsheet on the laptop crowd the edges of the screen like a storm front. Debt balances, interest rates, a mortgage payment that feels heavier every month. Outside, the street is quiet. Inside, the clock keeps reminding Alex of birthdays past and opportunities presumed lost. That's the ordinary world of our story. Daily routines, responsibilities, the weight of past choices. You can feel the hesitation. Should I act now? Is it too late? And you see it in the tiny gestures. A credit card left in a drawer, the canceled gym membership, the avoided calls. Then, almost without fanfare, a calm voice at the doorway. Zero isn't a verdict. It's a beginning. It's not a stranger but a guide. Steady, experienced, the kind of person who has sat at tables just like this one and helped people fold fear into plans. Start from what you have, the guide says, pulling a chair closer. We'll name the debts, map the hours you own, and find margins you didn't know existed. A small, honest conversation unfolds. Alex admits the shame of missed chances. The guide listens and reframes it into fuel. Scarcity taught you to survive. The guide offers. Now it can teach you to be strategic. The scene is specific, late-night receipts, a calendar marked with due dates, the soft hum of a refrigerator. But the emotion is universal. Midlife uncertainty mixed with a hunger for dignity and choice. This video is for that person, the man or woman between 35 and 65 who looks at zero and wonders whether to step forward. Tell me, what's your biggest financial difficulty today? If this resonates, tap the like button gently and subscribe to follow the rest of this journey. In the next part, we leave the kitchen table and begin the first step. A clear, compassionate roadmap to tame the numbers and claim the first small wins. The kitchen light hummed over a table strewn with envelopes, a half-drunk mug cooling beside a smartphone that buzzed with reminders and unpaid bills. He, late 40s, shoulders a little stooped from years of worrying, traced a coffee ring with a finger and felt the old familiar knot. Shame mixed with that quiet, stubborn ember of wanting more. She, the same age, recently divorced, balancing a second job and a teenager's needs, sat across from him at a community center table, both brought together by a flyer promising practical steps from zero. The room smelled of lemon cleaner and trust. Where do I even start? He said, voice low. Every step feels like paying someone else's future instead of mine. A calm voice answered, soft but steady, the mentor who had walked this path herself. Start with what you can control, she said, sliding a simple notebook across. Not the market, not tomorrow. Today. A single line. What comes in, what goes out. Her hands were steady. Her eyes held the patience of someone who'd learned to rebuild from scratch. They wrote. The bright relief when income matched reality was almost audible. They discovered that cutting one small recurring subscription freed enough for a modest emergency jar. The mentor leaned in and sketched two maps. A debt snowball for momentum, a focused rainy day fund for safety. Momentum wins, she said. Small victories paid consistently become a new life. They practiced scripts for difficult conversations, calling creditors, negotiating lower interest, asking for flexible hours at work. The room shifted as confidence unfurled. A negotiation that once felt like a confrontation now looked like a problem-solving call. The mentor suggested micro-income ideas that respected limited time, teaching a weekend class, monetizing a hobby online, or freelancing tasks in pockets of free time. You don't need a windfall, she reminded them. You need repeatable habits. At dusk, the two shared a quiet laugh over a list of emotional triggers. Celebratory spending, stress shopping, the old, I deserve this mantra. The mentor handed them a practical tool. A 48-hour rule before any non-essential purchase. If you still want it after 2 days, reconsider, she said. The air felt lighter. The path, suddenly visible. If this resonates with you, Give it a like and stay with us. What's your biggest financial difficulty today? Next, we'll meet the first true trial, habits that fight back and the exact tools to reshape them into allies. The kitchen light is dim, a stack of envelopes like a small, accusing city on the table. She sits there, 48, tired from long days, imagining the future as a far shore. A knock at the door is not dramatic. It is gentle. The mentor enters not as a stranger but as a steady presence. Soft-voiced, practical, carrying a worn notebook and a mug that steams of patience. We start with what you have, the mentor says, pulling out a blank sheet. 0 is not nothing. It's a clean page. Tell me your monthly numbers. We'll map them together. They speak in plain language. The mentor coaches a zero-based budget. Every dollar assigned a job, so rent, food, and small comforts stop fighting for the same paycheck. They choose a debt strategy together. The avalanche for interest savers, the snowball for momentum seekers. Make the minimum sacred, then throw extra at the highest rate debt. Call your lender. Ask for lower rates. You'd be surprised what a 5-minute conversation can do. The protagonist nods, surprised by how a plan eases the throat tightness that used to be constant. Scene shifts to a busy morning routine. A 15-minute weekly money check becomes a ritual. Automations are set, small transfers to an emergency sink, rounding up spare change into investment accounts, micro-investing platforms that buy fractional shares. The mentor talks about creating income streams that fit a life with responsibilities. A weekend freelance project that uses existing skills, teaching an online class, renting a seldom-used room, or monetizing a hobby. Scale slowly, the mentor warns. Small, repeatable income beats risky swings. They confront emotional spending in a candid exchange. The protagonist admits the impulse to buy solace after long days. The mentor teaches a delay ritual, 48 hours, a walk, a note in a spending journal. Tools are concrete. An app to track every expense, an envelope system for discretionary spending, a spreadsheet that lights up when a goal is hit. Habit formation is pragmatic, calendar blocks, automatic transfers, 1-hour financial Sundays. A late-night scene shows the protagonist closing the ledger, a quiet smile that is new. There is fear, risk aversion, the worry of starting late, but also a small roadmap in hand. What still waits ahead are the tougher tests. Unexpected expenses, a temptation that could derail small gains, the moment to make the first real investment. What is your biggest financial difficulty today? Share it and subscribe quietly to walk the next steps with us. The morning after the wake-up call, the house felt different, quieter, charged. He sat at the kitchen table under the single pendant light, bills spread like a defeated map. She poured coffee, watched him breathe, then sat across and said, "We start small, one thing at a time." The words were simple, but they landed like a compass. A mentor enters not as a stranger, but as a neighbor at the community center. Maria, a calm-faced planner who speaks in practical metaphors. "Think of money like water," she says, stirring her tea. "You can dam it, redirect it, or let it flood your life. The first step is to channel it." She shows them a whiteboard with 3 clear lanes, essentials, debts, and future, and draws a narrow path from a zero balance to a steady stream. Her voice is steady. Budget by purpose, not by guilt. Every dollar should have a job. They begin with a brittle, honest budget. Groceries reduced without sacrifice, subscriptions pruned like dead branches, a tiny emergency bucket carved out. There are small triumphs. One lunchbox saved each week becomes an extra $50 to throw at a credit card. "Look," he whispers when he sees the first payment drop. "We're moving." But habits fight back. At the grocery store, the lure of easy impulses flares. He almost reaches for a brand-name item and remembers the whiteboard. Emotionally, restraint feels like loss, but Maria reframes it. This is choice, not deprivation. Income diversification comes as a late-evening brainstorm. She mentions an old hobby, woodworking, he had shelved years ago. "Teach a weekend class," she suggests. "Or sell a few pieces online." They sketch a microplan on a napkin. 1 product, 1 platform, 1 hour a day. Risk is small, time limited, but the idea is scalable. Debt strategy is precise and tactical. They adopt a snowball approach, small balances first to build momentum, and set up one automatic payment that never misses. When emotion tempts them to splurge, they answer not with retail but with a question Maria taught them. Will this bring me closer to freedom or further from it? The question slows the hand. At night, the protagonist lies awake, imagining a future where choices replace anxieties. The next decision will test resolve, a first real investment, small but symbolic. As dawn approaches, they prepare to act, heart steady, roadmap in hand, and wonder. What obstacle will force them to commit fully? The days that follow feel both ordinary and sacred. Morning light slips through the kitchen blinds as our protagonist, call her Anna, or him, Carlos, sits with a mug and a spreadsheet that once felt like a foreign language. The mentor's voice from the earlier meeting echoes. Small, steady moves beat dramatic leaps. So they begin. A clear budget that treats bills like commitments and wants like optional friends. A debt snowball where the smallest balance meets attention first, earning tiny victories that feed courage. In the market, Anna closes the tab on an impulse purchase and instead scrolls through a community forum where people her age share first small wins. A paid-off credit card, the first $100 saved, a side gig that fits between school pickups and late shifts. Afternoons are a study in time stacking. Carlos records 3 hours a week to build a freelance offer around skills gathered over decades. A reliable trade, polished. He learns to price not by fear but by value. The first client sends a nervous message, then an invoice that arrives like proof. Someone is willing to pay for his experience. Nights are for rituals. Automatic transfers that transform someday into a scheduled habit. The protagonist sets aside a modest emergency fund, then opens a low-cost investment account and starts with fractions, micro-investing that reduces the dread of markets into a calm, monthly routine. But progress is not cinematic perfection. There are setbacks. An emotional splurge after a stressful week, a car repair that eats a month's cushion, self-doubt whispering, "Is this too late?" In one quiet scene, Anna finds herself at the bakery, hand hovering over a croissant. Her inner voice remembers the mentor's question, "What would your future self thank you for?" She puts the pastry back, buys a simple coffee, and later that evening marks another small win on the calendar. These moments become the real training ground, habits built by repetition, resilience forged by small recoveries. Conversations between mentor and protagonist are practical and tender. Protect your smallest wins, the mentor says, and compound them. The camera lingers on spreadsheets filling with green, a growing bar of debt shrinking in red, a side hustle invoice notification that lands like applause. If this resonates with you, pause and tell me, what's the one small habit you could start today? If you want to follow how these choices turn into true momentum, subscribe gently. There's more ahead. A test that will demand courage and a strategy to scale everything they've built. The lamp casts a warm circle over the kitchen table where they sit, late into another ordinary night that suddenly feels like a crossroads. Receipts are spread like fallen leaves, a laptop glow, a coffee gone cold. They run a finger along a credit card statement. Numbers that used to mean shame now begin to look like data, like terrain to be mapped. A voice, calm and steady, comes from the doorway. Start with the small wins, the mentor says. Stop the leaks first. They talk like two conspirators against the past. What if I can't do it? They ask, honest and raw. You already started, the mentor replies. You showed up. That's the hardest part. Together they build a budget that breathes, an envelope for essentials, a buffer for missteps, a tiny automatic transfer to a savings account that feels ridiculous at first and then revolutionary. Even $5 becomes a promise. Scenes shift. A Saturday morning, time blocking on a notepad, the protagonist carving 30 minutes for learning a marketable skill. An evening of cold calls and emails, awkward at first but sharpening. A side gig emerges not as a fantasy but as practice, one small client, then another, and each deposit into the account is a quiet proof that the plan works. They test the debt snowball method, paying the smallest balance first. The relief when the first debt disappears is almost physical, like sunlight through closed blinds. But trials persist. An unexpected car repair threatens to undo the rhythm. The mentor's voice returns. When the storm comes, protect the system, not just the balance. They reallocate, tighten discretionary spending, and recommit to the automated savings. Emotional spending shows up like an old friend. Lonely evenings, celebratory treats, but awareness becomes armor. A simple habit. Pause, breathe, ask if this purchase moves you toward the life you want. Begins to break patterns. Small rituals anchor them. A weekly review with a cup of tea, a celebration for every milestone, calling a friend instead of shopping. Progress is uneven, human, and deeply motivating. If this resonates, give a quiet like. What's your biggest financial difficulty today? Subscribe to keep walking this path. There's more ahead. In the next chapter, the plan is scaled and tested. New income streams must grow, and with them, the courage to invest in a different future. You sit at the kitchen table long after the house is quieted. A single lamp throwing a soft pool of light over a stack of envelopes. The protagonist, someone who once believed time had run out, now leans into a different conviction. 0 is a clean slate. Fingers trace the numbers written in shaky ink. The ceiling fan hums like a steady metronome. A message pings from the mentor. Small rules, big results. You whisper it aloud, as if saying it will make it true. Scenes unfold with cinematic clarity. In a small cafe, the mentor sketches a simple map on a napkin. A prioritized debt list, a tiny emergency buffer, 3 income ideas you can start this month. Begin with one habit, she says, stirring her coffee. Automate it. Protect it. You nod, tasting both skepticism and a sliver of hope. Back home, you set up a basic budget, essentials, debt payments, a tiny savings line labeled freedom, and schedule an automatic transfer of $10 a week. It feels almost comical, but when the first $40 accumulates, the laugh is one of relief. Trials arrive not as earthquakes but as potholes. An emotional impulse to splurge after a hard day, a late work assignment that eats evening hours, the old voice that tells you to play it safe and wait for the right moment. Each trial you meet with a practical tool. Emotional spending is handled with a pause ritual. Breathe, walk, wait 24 hours. Limited time is reclaimed through a 5-hour rule. Trim one low-value activity. Repurpose that time for something that earns or saves. Risk aversion becomes a question of scale. Micro-investing, index funds, and steady contributions replace gambling choices. Along the way, small victories accumulate into proof. The credit card balance drops by a meaningful chunk. The side hustle brings its first predictable $200. The emergency jar reaches $500, and the nervous knot in your chest loosens. Conversations with family shift from fear to planning. Yet the journey is not over. Momentum brings a new kind of test. Decisions about where to invest your hard-won stability so it grows without exposing you to reckless risk. If this part resonates, tap like and tell me. What's your biggest financial difficulty today? Subscribe and stay. Next, we face the pivotal decision that will turn steady progress into lasting prosperity. The morning light finds you at the kitchen table again. Bills spread like weathered maps. You trace a pen down a fresh budget, rent, groceries, a headline debt that used to feel like a boulder. The mentor's voice from the workshop settles in your mind. Small, consistent actions beat occasional grand gestures. You start with the simple ritual they taught. Create a zero-based budget for this month. Carve out a tiny emergency fund first, then point every extra dollar at the highest interest debt. It's not dramatic. It's methodical. When you transfer that first automatic $25 into a separate savings account, you feel a pulse of something like victory. The ledger is no longer a list of threats, but a sequence of choices you can repeat. Outside, the neighborhood hums with weekday life. Delivery trucks, a neighbor jogging with a dog, while inside you negotiate tougher conversations. You tell your partner about cutting cable, about selling an unused tool set, and you both taste the awkwardness of change. It feels like giving things up, they say. It feels like taking control. You reply, and the room tilts toward teamwork. Later, you meet resistance. A card payment overrun, a sudden car expense. For a moment panic returns, and the old temptation to ignore the plan threatens to win. The mentor's steady image returns, no lectures, just one question that recenters you. What will the future version of you thank you for today? That question becomes your compass. You begin to diversify income the practical way. A freelance gig 2 evenings a week, a small online listing of handmade items, and a careful experiment with low-fee index funds once your buffer reaches a safe level. Each step is paired with rituals, monthly review nights, a spreadsheet that tracks progress visually, and an accountability call with a friend who has the same goal. Those rituals let you measure small wins, and those wins build courage. If any of this strikes a chord, a simple like helps others find it, and I'd love to hear from you. What's your biggest financial difficulty today? Hold that question as you prepare. The next challenge will test both your resolve and your plan, and the way you respond will decide whether this journey becomes a habit or a headline. The kitchen light casts a warm circle on the table where our protagonist spreads out the past months. A simple notebook, a phone with the budgeting app open, a printed plan that once felt impossibly small. Outside, the neighborhood is quiet. Inside, there is movement, pen tapping, soft breathing, a quiet determination. The guide sits across, not lecturing but steady, like the lighthouse after a long drift at sea. You did the hard part, the guide says. You turned fear into steps. Now the test is consistency. The protagonist exhales, memories of late-night worry and crumpled bills flickering like a film. What if I slip? Comes the fragile question. The guide smiles, voice patient. Then you correct. The horizon doesn't vanish because one wave knocks you down. They rehearse the small rituals that protect progress. A weekly budget check at Sunday breakfast, 2 automated transfers. One for an emergency buffer, one for slow, steady investments, and a simple rule to pause before any non-essential purchase. Scenes unfold like chapters. A call with a side hustle client that pays for next month's groceries. A calendar reminder to review subscriptions. A moment of pride when the debt snowball finally tips the smallest card into zero. Each win is ordinary and monumental at once. Emotion shifts from anxious vigilance to quiet confidence. The protagonist notices friends asking, "How did you do it?" and finds they can tell a story that is real, not perfect. The missteps, the nights they reconsidered everything, and the practical habits that rebuilt their choices. In conversation, one neighbor admits, "I thought it was too late for me." The protagonist replies, hands steady now, "It's not about when you start. It's about starting with what you have." As the plan solidifies, the guide draws the final map of this stage. Keep the system simple, lean on community, and measure progress by habits, not perfection. Then, leaning forward, the guide asks, quieter now, "What's your biggest financial difficulty today?" The question hangs like an invitation. If this conversation resonates and you want the templates, scripts, and calm momentum to keep going, join me for the final part, where we claim the true prize and make this freedom unmistakably yours. He steps back into the kitchen where the light is softer now. The day winding down and the bills neatly stacked in a small, disciplined pile that no longer feels like a threat. Across the table his partner pours coffee, and they share a look that carries the weight of years and the lightness of something finally moving forward. "We did the snowball," she says, and the way the words land is quiet and unbelieving, like a secret revealed. He smiles, remembering the mentor's voice, calm, patient, repeating the same simple truths. Small steps, consistent rituals, protect the emergency fund, automate the savings. That voice lives in him now, not as instruction but as habit. Outside, the neighborhood hums. A dog barks, a streetlight clicks on. Inside, he opens an app and watches the numbers do something they never did before, grow. Not meteoric, not overnight. Steady, compound interest doing its slow, generous work. He remembers the nights of worry, the impulse purchases that felt like comfort and left him hollow, the shrinking of possibilities. Those trials taught him discipline. He also recalls the first extra income from a weekend project. Awkward at first, but eventually a reliable lane for savings. Each small victory, paid-off card, funded 3-month cushion, first micro-investment became a stone on a path. The climax wasn't a single moment of triumph, but a quiet reclamation. freedom measured in choices rather than balances. He chooses to accept a part-time consultancy that brings joy, not because he must, but because he can. She chooses to take painting classes without guilt. The house, once a map of compromise, now holds room for possibility. They talk about travel, about time with family, about saying no to work that drains them. Their calendar is less full, but their lives feel larger. If this story touched something inside you, take a breath and ask, what's your biggest financial difficulty today? Leave that answer where others can see it. The conversation matters. If you found these steps useful, a small gesture helps us keep making these guides. Like what resonated? Share a thought, and subscribe to follow the next practical chapters in this journey toward lasting prosperity.